Today I'm going to explain why they have to claim the ground is rising up. And I'm not talking about flat earthers. I'm talking about physicists and modern physics have to claim that the ground is accelerating up. Let me be clear for the millionth time. I'm not here to convince you that the ground is rising up. I'm here to show you that the people we debate against deny their own physics so they don't have to explain it, and that it's a good argument. There's a reason they're denying their own physics and putting it off on us. So we need to be throwing this shit in their face. But for the people who haven't seen, I'm going to show a brief clip of some of the receipts so they don't think I'm just making shit up. Then I'm going to prove that the force is up, not down. Because you're not going to get this explanation from anybody else.
And let me be clear, I don't mean that being at rest in a gravitational field is like accelerating in a rocket. I mean it is the exact same thing. You are accelerating and there is no gravitational field. Gravitational fields do not exist.
So the thing that Einstein noticed, which is not explained in any way satisfactorily in Newton's theory.
I'm going to show why Newton's theory doesn't work in reality. You can equivocate the math and say that Einstein built off Newtonian, but that's not true. I'm going to prove that too.
That all things fall at the same rate. Newton doesn't explain it, really. It's rather convoluted. There's no real explanation of that. But Einstein's theory, the explanation is that they're not falling. It is the ground that is accelerating up. It is the ground that is accelerating up.
It might shock you to learn then that at the surface of the Earth, there is no gravity. None whatsoever. The reason the apple falls to the earth is due to the fact that you, the observer, are accelerating upwards through space at 9.8 meters per second squared. You and the ground beneath you are literally rushing up to meet the apple, as well as towards anything else that might happen to be falling at that moment.
Now, everything Brian Cox said is easily provable, but he never explains it, which is baffling. But I've had arguments with several flat earthers, and I've heard Peter and Pete say that it's just the way the device is calibrated. You can't calibrate an accelerometer at zero on the ground. This is what Newtonian physics states. It states that the motionless frame or the inertial frame is at the ground. There's a equal and opposite force pushing up on you, which works for an explanation, works for the math, but it doesn't work in reality. That will not fly a drone, period. Now, a crude or basic accelerometer is just a bottle of water, okay? And with the water at the bottom and the air at the top, that shows you 1G. So you can't just zero it out on the ground and call that the inertial frame. But first I'll read this and let them explain it before I go into detail. But one other thing I want to mention, acceleration is absolute, okay? Maybe motion is relative. That's kind of impossible to argue against. But acceleration is absolute. So what do accelerometers measure? Accelerometer measures motion, specifically acceleration, changes in speed or direction, and vibration, allowing devices to sense orientation like phone screens, count steps, but mainly in this video like a drone. Okay, there's a way that it detects the direction. There's a reason the drone knows which way it's going and which way is up, down, left, right, diagonal. They're extremely accurate these days. So I asked, if I calibrate an accelerometer to zero while stationary on the ground, will it work? It says if you leave the device flat, works for linear motion. I would even argue that, but it says if you only slide the device left, right, forward, or backwards without tilting it, it will work perfectly. Stationary, it reads zero. Moving it will show only the force of your movement, e.g., if you push it, you see the spike in acceleration. But how are you going to know the direction, really? But here, too, if you tilt or rotate the device, it will not work. This is where the calibration breaks. The problem, gravity is a constant force pulling down. Look how it says pulling down, but I'm going to break that in half as soon as I'm done reading it. When you calibrate it to zero, you told the sensor, please permanently subtract g from the z-axis. While that's accurate, if gravity was a force pulling down at 1g, so there's a downward pulling force. So if you accelerated it to the right at 9.8 meters per second squared, it would think that now it's stationary and something's pulling it from the fucking right on top of pulling it down. Or if it were going, let's say, upwards left at 9.8 meters per second squared, then it would have to think it's stationary again and that the force changed directions. So then when it stops accelerating, it's going to think it's getting pulled back in that direction that it last faced. Think about this for a second. If it was a pulling force pulling the drone down, making it read 1G, then the drone would think that it's stationary anytime it accelerated in whatever direction at 9.8 meters per second squared. It would know that it turned, but it wouldn't know that it's going anywhere, because if it's equivalent, if going to the right at 9.8 meters per second squared is equivalent to standing on the ground, then it would think that there's a force pulling it, so it would just think it turned. It would know that it turned, but it would think it's just sitting there, and that the force is pulling from a different direction. So then if the drone was in free fall, it would literally have to think that its ultimate last direction is moving backwards in that whatever its last direction happened to be. So that would be fine if it went straight up. Then it would think it's getting pulled back down to the ground, which is fine. But if its last direction was, let's say, diagonally to the right, and it stopped accelerating, then it would think it's going back diagonally to the right. Think about that. If it stops accelerating, then it thinks it's getting pulled back. So a drone wouldn't work. The only way it works is if it's motionless in free fall. If the inertial frame has got to be free fall for it to know any direction it goes and how much it's accelerating or how much it stopped accelerating. So the only way for the drone to work is for 1G to be the drone accelerating up. It's got to be programmed that way for it to understand every direction that it's accelerating and how much it's decelerating. That way when it does decelerate, it's going to know that the only direction that's going to catch up with it is the ground. That's the only thing that's going to catch up with it. So one last thing to think about. If I calibrate it at 0 while it's stationary on the ground, then that means I've got to accelerate in whatever direction to 9.8 meters per second squared to get back to 0. So the only way that's going to work is if it reads negative when it's not accelerating when it turns directions. So then it's got to think it's going backwards. I mean, I explained it. But so this is why physicists, they understand this. I don't know why they don't explain it. They could probably do a better job, but they know that physics has to claim the ground rising up for reality to work the way it works. So we don't have to claim it, but it's a great argument against the globe, pointing out these facts, pointing out that the force is up. How can you have an upwards force on a globe? I think we could all agree that would destroy the globe. That's why they deny it. But drones don't deny the facts. So I would argue that, yeah, it's easy to prove the force is up and gravity is a pseudo force, like centripetal force. You make the turn, the turn's the force, the pseudo force is you flying outward. So once again, I'm not trying to convince you that the earth is rising up. I'm trying to convince you that the true force or acceleration is indeed up. And just bring this up to globers, watch them squirm, or they'll start making shit up. They'll start denying science. And when they start denying science, that's when you know you got them pinned on the ropes. Thanks for watching.